Good evening, everybody. I'm wearing my new hat. I'm in the PP Islands in Thailand and just sort of getting my bearings. We got off the boat a little while ago, stopped in a coffee shop, and wanted to kind of charge up. And I thought I'd say hello and do a quick periscope for you. All of you that don't know me, I'm Dr. Taylor Burrowes. You can call me Taylor. But I have a PhD in marriage, couples, and family therapy, and I work as an online dating and relationship coach. So I'm traveling Southeast Asia with Dennis, with my boyfriend, and we're having a great time. We're going to all the Thailand islands right now, and we spent a month in Vietnam as well. Anyway, with all that being said, I read recently an article by Jeffrey Miller about polyamory, which I thought was really interesting. And I don't know if you've read it, but I did post it. I tweeted it yesterday or the day before. I think it was yesterday, but it could have been the day before. But if not, check him out on Twitter at Primal Poly. And he is a psychologist and a professor. I forget which university, but he admits that he talks openly about being polyamorous as well, and he's about to marry his girlfriend. And actually, he reached out to me and suggested that I read this article because he knows that I am an advocate of monogamy, and I talk about that in a lot of the work and the content that I put out there. So it is an interesting conversation to have, and I do think that we're long overdue in having more of a visible dialogue about this. And so do take a few minutes and read that article because it is pretty interesting. It's long, so put a few minutes aside, and I'm still digesting it myself, actually. A lot of interesting points that I'm going to get into on my newsletter. So if you aren't on my newsletter, go ahead and subscribe to that as well. You get a lot of your early access to certain content and a lot of perks. So the article is by Jeffrey Miller, and on Twitter he's at Primal Poly. I think it's just PRIMALPOLY. So he openly discusses that he's polyamorous. And he wrote this article. I don't remember exactly the name, but it's polyamory is in the title. And I did retweet it the other day, yesterday, the day before. So I'm going to respond comprehensively to this article in my newsletter. And you can go to my Twitter bio and click the link and sign up for my newsletter and get the free 15 ideal relationship tips as well. So you can hear or read the entire response to this article. Yes, polyamorous. So I titled this Polyamory is the New Bisexuality because it's just more common now. Like it's just like this new trend that people are against monogamy and they're calling themselves monogamish or polyamorous. And the sort of old historical term that used to be used more officially was polygamy, right? Like we have that stereotype of some religious groups that have more of a polygamous historical dynamic. And whether it's legal or not is definitely an issue, but just in comparing it to monogamy, there is the polygamy, but then polyamorous is more of a modern phenomenon that allows people to have open relationships. So the fidelity is not limited to two people. So it's an open relationship. It's kind of like an umbrella term for that. And some of the points that I wanted to make was one, yeah, I do agree that it's become quite common for people to just sort of accept this anything goes mentality. But what he was pointing out is that that's not the intention of polyamory. So polyamory is supposed to have kind of its own set of principles and guidelines, and there's supposed to be a level of fidelity and a level of, accountability in the partnership. So even though it's an open relationship, there's usually a main, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever they want to call themselves. I'm not particularly sure what all the jargon is, but thank you. I thought I'd share my hat with you. I call it my Zorro hat, but trying to, keep the face guarded. So, sorry, a little aside, but in general, I think it's important for us to look at it and see if it is valid, and also, it's also a preference thing. So I compared it to bisexuality because now some of his research in this article that he referenced showed that Polyamory is even more common than homosexuality. So I think that's pretty shocking that there are more people claiming to be polyamorous than homosexual. But I think it's kind of a similar thing, right? The phenomenon of sort of being vague and ambiguous and open to sexual gratification and sexual positivity, body positivity. It has a good element where you want to be confident and embrace what you have born with you, like what you were born with, but then, also challenging yourself to improve yourself as much as possible. So you don't want to just accept being unfit and unwell. And going back to the other thing, he called it the new sexual revolution. So originally, we had the historical sexual revolution back in the 60s. And so now this is like this next wave of a sexual revolution where Jeffrey Miller is the one that wrote the article. So this tendency for people to use this term to open up their relationships and feel like it's accepted, I think that is definitely challenging monogamous traditions. But this is the point that I want to really explore in my newsletter. So see if you agree with me, and you can kind of make your comments. But I believe that what it's responding to, polyamory, and Jeffrey Miller talks about this, the point, that the benefit of it is that it actually challenges us as people to make ourselves optimized. We're people who are polyamorous. I'm not polyamorous, I'm monogamous. But people who are polyamorous then are still in the sexual dating marketplace, right? So they're challenged to compete with other people still, even though they have that significant prime partner. They then can, they still want to look good. They still want to, they don't want to be jealous and paranoid that they're going to lose their partner because he's or she's going to be off with somebody else. And yes, I get what they're saying when as that's a benefit of it, but it shouldn't be that way. A monogamous couple shouldn't be complacent. So a monogamous couple still needs to have that mentality where you're going to be taking care of yourself and making sure that you're meeting your own needs, but also meeting your partner's needs, and not getting bored or taking each other for granted. You should always be investing in optimizing the relationship and keeping yourself top tier, right? And that is an issue, and it's a major problem. And a lot of monogamous traditional relationships have definitely fallen into that bad pattern of getting to that point and failing. And divorce isn't necessarily, and 50% of marriages are not ending in divorce. It's a lower number than we think it is. But the way that I like to explain it is, when you pick the wrong person, the likelihood of you getting divorced or just having a horrible marriage is going to skyrocket. I would say it's much higher than 50%. But if you're going to be married to the right person, then you definitely need to have longevity in mind and maintain that desire to impress them and date them for the entire lifespan of your relationship. So the study that Jeffrey Miller referenced, I'm not sure. You have to read the article. It's in there, but I don't remember which one it was. So no, the divorce rate is not as high as that. But divorce is absolutely horrifying. What happens when people are, they're getting into these horrible custody cases. A lot of people are very depressed. They're even suicidal. They're going through a lot of agony. And so it's a major problem. And we need to make sure and show some of the positive success stories of monogamous relationships as well. But we don't want to exclude people who choose a different lifestyle. If you, in your relationship, like let's say Jeffrey Miller, who wrote this article, and his soon-to-be wife, if they're going to agree to certain rules and expectations for each other, that's their business. It's just kind of like BDSM or whatever. Like if the couple decides that they want that type of sexual intimacy, then that's up to them. What they do behind closed doors, I don't feel is our business. as long as it's ethical. And I think that's the point that Mr. Miller, Dr. Miller, I shouldn't call him Mr. Miller, that's bad. Dr. Miller was saying was that it's not that different. It's not, people are afraid of this because they think it challenges monogamy. And I think it does in a way, but if you see it as another form of monogamy and it's just different rules that the actual couple uses in their sexual life. No, I don't think you understood what I was saying. So an ethical relationship, whether you're homosexual, heterosexual, monogamous, or whatever, is truthful. And so an ethical contract is one where the two of you agree to certain terms and there's no deceit, there's no lying, there's no cheating. You adhere to the rules and guidelines and expectations that you set out with from the beginning. So even when dating, I think it's really important to have that ethical mindset. So, I talk about my preference towards working with people on a sort of the expectation that you're going to be in a monogamous relationship, but it's not that I exclude people who are not monogamous or are dating casually or are polygamous in open relationships or or homosexual. It really doesn't matter what you choose, whatever that demographic is, as long as you are ethical about your choices and as healthy as can be. So I don't exclude people along those lines, but I do think that a lot of people just sort of waffle between different sexual behaviors because they're searching for something, because they're not fulfilled. They're uncomfortable with vulnerability, with their intimacy, with the self. And to be able to be open to a partner is really uncomfortable. And so because of that fear and anxiety that comes up when you have to be exposed to that partner, people then try to, I think, dilute that by normalizing having multiple partners. So if it's a healthy person that absolutely chooses to do it, then that's up to them. But a lot of times too, I believe that people who do not really love each other, it's a lot easier to have an open relationship with someone who isn't an ideal partner, who you're not head over heels with. And I don't mean to minimize someone like Dr. Miller's relationship, but if I generalize it, I would say a lot of people perhaps that are polygamous are not necessarily with an ideal partner, if that makes sense. I've known people in my personal life who have identified as polyamorous, and they have had an experience where they thought they were with someone that, a girlfriend or boyfriend that would last, and then they realized that they kind of went from monogamy to polyamory because that significant other was polyamorous. And then after it sort of all fell apart, they went back to monogamy and basically came to terms with the fact that I wasn't really comfortable with that. This is my friend speaking, not me. He wasn't really comfortable with that, but he went along with it because he really wanted to be with the person. So I think a lot of those factors are involved, and we don't really hear a lot about that. But if two healthy, mature adult people choose to have a sexual life in their relationship that meets their needs on their terms, who are we to judge? So if you see where I'm going with this, I think there is an adaptable element to it, and it can work for some people, but I think for the most part, a lot of people are just basically avoiding the commitment and the vulnerability. And, I think it's a lot of people are just afraid. They're afraid of the risk that it takes to commit to one person. And obviously it's different for men and women, but it's difficult for everybody. I was actually going to tweet this earlier and I made a mental note, so hopefully I'll remember now. But relationships are difficult. Monogamous long-term relationships are not meant to be easy in regards to the process of getting there. Once you get there, it should be enjoyable. There should be a lot of comfort and ease to pair with the tension and that playfulness, that fun teasing aspect. But the part from like meeting someone that is a suitable partner potentially and becoming exclusive, that whole timeline is really complex. And to get there, it's a gift. It's a gift to get to that point with someone, and then you should really work hard to keep it and preserve it. Humans, one of the species that cling to only one partner. Who is this agent man? I don't know. I think what you're saying is that a lot of animals have more than one partner. And there's a lot of arguments that go into it. I mean, people talk about monogamy is evolutionarily like past its prime, but I don't think that the fact that the basis of a man's nature is to spread a seed with as many potential sexual partners as possible. I think that there is a time and a place for that, especially a young, immature man who is learning his sexual confidence. There may be a part there for it to play, but a lot of men grow out of that. They ultimately it's empty to them, and they want something more of substance. So it's important not to encourage men to just have casual sex just because you believe that their biology sort of coerces them to spread their seed. Exactly. I mean, you can have children in an open relationship, and Dr. Miller talks about that in his article too. But I think it's really important to recognize that this sort of sexualized depiction of masculine, robust men is part of a developmental course along the lifespan, right? And yeah, I mean, a man wants to love someone as much as a woman wants to love someone, even though we don't really encourage them to be vulnerable in a weak way. I think it's important for them to be allowed to show affection and to talk about romance or show romance and value their partnership and prioritize their family. So we need to be careful. We don't want to go to one extreme or the other. We have to have like a healthy balance of these elements. Yeah, whether or not a person can love two women or if a woman can love two men equally is a really complicated question. I mean, love, there's lots of different ways to love someone, but a polyamorous person would say you can totally do that and love people in different ways. But you talk to a monogamous person like myself, I cannot love more than one person. Like, I put my all into one person, and that's it. And a lot of people are like that, and so there's no reason to invalidate that choice and that lifestyle. But at the same time, we're going to judge each other when we have different values, and so I don't necessarily judge a polyamorous person and say that their relationship is a facade, but I would want to make sure that they're both in a healthy position and they're not coerced, kind of like my friend that I was talking about. He really wasn't, that wasn't part of his value system, but he just felt coerced and pressured into it because he cared about the person. So when I work with people, I make sure that they put their value system first in order to find their ideal type of partnership. So we need to make sure that people are doing that. And getting back to the point that I want to extrapolate on, as long as you approach a relationship in a healthy way, then you can find that ideal partnership and maintain it and not get complacent and not let yourself go and not neglect your partnership or your partner or your sex life. And then that's the rationale that Dr. Miller was using for polyamory. So that's not the solution to the problem. I think it's a preference, but it's not the resolution to the issue that we're having with a lot of failed marriages and long-term relationships. So if you are in that situation, if you're in a monogamous relationship and you're feeling like, man, like I can't commit to this person completely. I really wish that I, was in sort of like an open relationship, or that I had a different dynamic with my significant other. Maybe you're just with the wrong person. Maybe you need to make sure that, you have all of these elements in place. And my little formula is logic plus desire plus love equals an ideal partnership. So think long and hard about that before you just sort of avoid committing into a monogamous relationship. Communication is absolutely key. Yeah, no, very, very important stuff. Some of that is the basic relationship skills like relationship IQ, uh, conflict resolution, problem solving, and communication. And it seems that modernity is antithetical to long term monogamy. Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. You're welcome. Um, the way that we're going is just impulse, convenience, anything goes. Positivity is really not positivity. Positivity is really complacency. So, we're redefining all these things according to this lifestyle of just having things at our fingertips and having plethora of options, and just not putting any effort into anything, and having that entitlement. So we really need to look at some of those qualities and improve them individually in order to have a better relationship to socially and to the world around us. So billionaires. Um, what was I talking about? Basically, just having self responsibility is where it starts. And then for people who do, you have to sift through the clutter and you have to find someone and be selective and discern like who is an appropriate partner for you, who shares your values, and and then I can help you with that as well. And it's not easy. I've been through it myself, but happily found mine, and it makes a big difference. It makes a big difference. We want to settle because we don't want to be alone, especially women. Like we don't want to be alone forever, and so that tendency to settle before you really find an ideal partner is there, and it's scary, and I know it. I've been there too. But hold out. You got to hold out, and you got to find a right kind of person for you, because if you try to commit to the wrong person, it's self-sabotage basically, and it's not going to work out. So better to hold out and develop yourself while you're alone first, even if it takes a little bit longer than you wish. So I know I missed a few comments there, but I'm going to go explore Phi Phi Island in Thailand right now. I'm going to go on the beach and see what we find. But I will talk to you soon. Thanks for joining me, and don't forget to reach out and sign up to my newsletter so you can get like the more comprehensive description of what I was talking about here. You're welcome. Ciao. You're welcome.